Hello students, welcome to the channel. In this video, we'll solve the third writing passage of the May 2017 US SAT, Legal Non-Representation. All my life, the sculptor Constantin Brancusi remarked, I have been seeking to capture the essence of flight. Bird in Space is a work of abstract art. It is not a readily recognizable representation of the bird in its title, but rather a polished arc of bronze that calls to mind the animal's graceful airborne motion. Now, the writer is considering adding the following sentence here. More than any of Brancusi's other works, the 1926 sculpture Bird in Space manages to achieve that aim. Should the writer make this addition? Now, as we were reading it, we saw that this jump from the first to the second sentence was abrupt, because here Brancusi was saying that he had always sought to capture the essence of flight. And then we started talking about Bird in Space without speaking of how this relates to Brancusi, right? So I want to talk about the fact that more than any of his other works, the sculpture Bird in Space manages to achieve that aim, the aim of capturing the essence of flight, right? So yes, I want to make this addition because it helps explain why the US government would eventually recognize Bird in Space as a work of art. No, so the US government is not even in play here, so that's not the point. Yes, because it provides an effective transition between the presentation of Brancusi's goal and the discussion of Bird in Space. So this is the best answer because, as I said, that jump between the first and second sentence was abrupt, and to smoothen that transition, we need to say this. With its ends tapering into points, much of the slender 53-inch curve appear suspended in the air above its marble base. Now, with its ends, so I'm looking for the pronoun its, not it apostrophe s, which is an abbreviation for it is, right? So I'm talking about Bird in Space. So with its ends, right? So it can't be A, it can't be B, and its apostrophe is not even a word. So it will be D with its ends tapering into points. Much of the slender 53-inch curve appears suspended, right? I need to use the singular verb here because I have a singular noun here. Much of the slender 53-inch curve appears. And I would use the simple present tense because I'm describing it and I'm already following the simple present tense in the paragraph, right? So much of the slender 53-inch curve appears suspended in the air above its marble base. More than just a visually arresting sculpture then, Bird in Space was responsible for changing how the US government recognizes art. Okay, so here I need to choose the right connector. And here I have described how this was a visually arresting sculpture, right? Its ends tapered into points and it had a slender 53-inch curve that appears suspended. But more than all of that, its primary historical significance is that it was able to change how the US government recognizes art. So even as I'm saying it, I'm saying that it was beautiful and it was a visually arresting sculpture, but its primary significance, right? So I need a contrasting connector here because I'm saying that more than all of this, its primary responsibility or its primary significance is that it helped the US government recognize art. So the correct one would be though, because though indicates a contrast, right? It can't be then because then is used to kind of conclude something to bring out a cause-effect relationship. So that's not it. At any rate is when you want to give a concession, right? For example, he may not be the best teacher, but I don't think we should fire him. At any rate, students love him, right? So I'm kind of presenting a concession. I'm presenting a positive quality of his, and therefore is also cause effect. So that doesn't make sense. Here, I need a contrasting connector. So though. In the 1920s, abstract art like Brancusi's was a new phenomenon, a sharp contrast to more traditionally representational paintings and statues. So it is perhaps unsurprising that Bird in Space received a mixed reception. The general public struggled to find artistic value in the sculpture. Indeed, many struggled to see it as a work of art at all. One newspaper likened it to half an airplane propeller, while also calling it a tall, slender, highly polished object. Within the art world, however, Bird in Space was recognized as a beautiful and innovative work of modern sculpture. Okay, so here I'm saying that it was a little hard for the general public to appreciate this sculpture because it was an abstract piece of art. It wasn't representational. One newspaper likened it to half an airplane propeller. Which choice gives the second supporting example that is more similar to the example in the sentence? So here I'm saying that one newspaper likened it to half an airplane propeller while also calling it a tall, slender, highly polished object. So that can't be correct because the second example has to be a criticism of this, right? That it was not something that the public appreciated. So it's not A. While another mocked it as an expensive potato masher. So this is a good answer because another newspaper called it as good as a potato masher, but an expensive one because this was a work of art. So I like P. While Brancusi considered it a symbol of flight, liberating man from the narrow confines of lifeless matter. So it can't be this because I'm not talking about Brancusi's perspective. I'm talking about the criticism that was hurled at this sculpture. While art critic Frank Crowninshield stated that it had the suggestion of flight. So again, this is not a point of criticism. It's simply what one art critic said. And anyway, we know that within the art world, it was thought of as beautiful. So it can't be D. The best answer is B. Such recognition led the art collector Edward Steichen to buy the piece and have it shipped to his New York City home from Brancusi's Paris studio. The importation of the sculpture brought it to the attention of the US Customs Bureau. The agency's view reflected that of the general public. When Bird in Space came to the US from France, the Customs Bureau classified it not as a work of art, but as an industrial object. That classification carried with it substantial consequences. Works of art could be imported to the US duty-free, but industrial materials were taxed at rates of up to 40% of their purchase value. Okay, so this comma here is clearly wrong because this is the subject and this is the verb. So you can't have a comma between the subject and verb. So the best answer would be C. I cannot use a comma, can't use a dash, and no comma after could. So simply works of art could be imported. But industrial materials were taxed at rates of up to 40% of their purchase value. This is correct because this is the pronoun for industrial materials, and that is plural. So we need the plural pronoun there. Its is singular, and one's and his is used for people, right? So those are not correct. As a result, Bird in Space faced an import tax of $229, more than a third of the $600 Teicher paid for it. Brancusi in turn sued the US government, aiming to score recognition of his sculpture as art. So again, here I have to choose the word that's most formal. So to score recognition does not indicate formality. To secure recognition, right? To secure recognition is to ensure that his sculpture is recognized as art. So I like this. To land recognition is okay, but again, not as formal as secure. So I think B is better. And gather is definitely not as good as secure. So I think B is the best answer. The resultant 1927 court case, Brancusi versus United States, attempted to answer for the American public the question of whether abstract works like Brancusi should be considered art. After hearing a lineup of well-known famous art critics testify to the aesthetic value and originality of non-representational art like bird in space, the court's ruling was in favor of Brancusi. Okay, so this is redundancy because I am using two words that mean the same thing, well-known and famous, so I don't have to. So A is wrong, well-known and famous, famously well-known. So all these are redundant. D is non-redundant, so that's the best answer. After hearing a lineup of famous art critics testify to the aesthetic value and originality of Bird in Space, the court ruled, right? Who heard the lineup? The court. So this is a modifier. After hearing a lineup of famous art critics, that's a modifier. And the part after the modifier should have the subject the modifier refers to. So that's the court. The court ruled in favor of Brancusi. It's not the court's ruling. That's not the subject. It's not the ruling of the court, and it's not Brancusi. It is the court that ruled after hearing a lineup of critics. So C. The decision meant that the public had finally come to recognize the artistic value of non-representational art. The writer wants a conclusion that reiterates the main idea expressed in the passage, which choice best accomplishes this goal. So I don't think it's the way it's written because this was a court ruling. So I don't think the public had come to recognize the artistic value. The main theme relates to how the US government was now forced to recognize the value of non-representational art. So I don't think it's A. The decision was a great victory for art collectors like Steichen. A major impediment to their ability to import artworks from Europe had been eliminated. Again, I don't think the focus is on art collectors, so I don't like this. The decision would forever broaden the range of art acknowledged by the US government. From then on, customs law would recognize both abstract and traditional works within the category of art. So this is the best answer in the context of the main aim of the passage, which was the fact that right in the first paragraph, we saw that more than an arresting sculpture, it changed the way US government viewed art. So I like C. The decision concerning the value of abstract works such as Bird in Space would take many more years to be made in the court of public opinion, however. So again, this is not a good conclusion because the passage is not about public opinion. The passage is about US government's view. So the best answer is C. Okay, let's grade this. Starting from 23. BDDCB, BDDCB, CABDCC, CABDCC. Okay, great. So we got all correct. Hope this helped. If it did, hit like and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in a new video soon. Take care. Bye-bye.